Let's replace a leaky timing chain cover on a Mk7 VW. Pop that engine cover off, then let's get some of these hoses out of the way. Back this hose clamp off and separate the hose from the activated charcoal filter solenoid valve. The coolant hose is attached to a rigid coolant line that's mounted to the motor right here. Now, that rigid coolant line doesn't move too much, but we're going to disconnect it nevertheless because, trust me, you'll need as much wiggle room as possible doing this job. Back that hose clamp off and separate the hose from the line. Okay, last of the hoses. These aren't even really getting removed. They're just clipped together and clipped to the engine, and we want to unclip them from each other and from the engine so we can have a little bit more working room. Time to get the wiring harness out of the way. Let's start out with this connector for the magnetic camshaft adjuster. Slide up on the clip, then squeeze and pull to disconnect. The harness for that same connector is connected to the timing chain cover near the oil filler cap, and as you can see here, I struggled mightily trying to get that clip off, and finally just resorted to using a wire cutter to snip off the zip tie portion of that clip. Disconnect the piston cooling nozzle control valve, the reduced oil pressure switch, and the oil pressure switch connectors. Now, it was really hard to get good footage in this tight space, so here's a diagram showing you exactly where these connectors are. The harness for all three of those connectors is clipped to the dipstick funnel, and it's another one of these tight situations where I opted to use a wire cutter to cut through the zip tie rather than properly removing the clip. That dipstick funnel is mounted to the motor with one T27 Torx bit fastener just next to that oil pressure switch connector. And you can see me coming in with a variety of low-profile wrenches trying to figure out what's going to work best, but the reality of the situation is it's such a tight space that you'll wind up doing, a tenth of a rotation per turn, and it's just a real exercise in patience. That dipstick funnel is still held in place. It's clipped into the timing chain cover, and you can probably remove this by hand, but if you happen to have a retaining clip pliers, it's sort of the perfect tool to squeeze the plastic and pull that dipstick funnel back from the timing chain cover. Now you'll see me fighting around that dipstick funnel for the rest of this video, and I don't know why I did that, but this is the time to yank the dipstick funnel. You've disconnected it, all you have to do is pull straight up on it and it's going to come out, and it'll give you a lot more room. You can get the timing cover out with the dipstick funnel still in place. It's just harder, so go ahead and pull the dipstick funnel now and ignore what you're seeing me do. Let's get that magnetic camshaft adjuster out. It's held in place by three T27 Torx bit fasteners, and you can see me here with my low profile wrench just breaking them free, and then they're so loose actually it's much easier I think to back them out by hand. So I took a spare T27 Torx bit, wrapped a little bit of masking tape around the bottom and jammed it into a 1/4-inch socket, made this nice little low profile tool that you can use to spin these back out after they've been broken free. With those three fasteners removed, we can begin to gently pry back on that camshaft adjuster magnet. But before you get this thing out, I made this mistake here. Shove a rag or some paper towel underneath, because once you get this thing pried out, just a small little trickle of oil will come out the bottom, and in my case, some of that fell onto the serpentine belt, so I had a little cleanup to do. I'll save you some time by telling you to shove a rag or some paper towel beneath that camshaft adjuster magnet before you pry it out. We have just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fasteners remaining on the timing chain cover itself. The top 4 fasteners are super straightforward. The bottom 2 are really tight in there and are going to require some patience. So let's start there with this bottom left-hand fastener. I'm not showing all of my trial and error here, but I found in the end that these are so loose, just like the camshaft magnet, that you can just get in, at least in the case of this fastener, with your hand and roll it back, right? Break it free with the low profile wrench, but just use your fingers to roll it back. There wasn't enough room for me to get my hand in on this lower right hand fastener, so in the end I just used a 10mm box wrench, maybe 1/8 of a turn at a time, to back that fastener out. By the way, this is really where it would have paid for me to have yanked that dipstick funnel to get some more space for removing that bottom right-hand fastener. Alright, the remaining 4 fasteners are significantly easier, plenty of space, just break them free, and then again it's easier to just back them out by hand. They're so loose that if you try to use a ratchet on them after you've broken them free, the ratchet will just turn it tight again. Okay, the home stretch. We're going to gently pry all around that timing chain cover, and you may discover, as I discovered here, that some of my fasteners weren't all the way backed out. It's really tough to tell if they're all the way backed out because the design is such that the fastener doesn't pull out of the timing cover, right? It's held in place by the gasket, which is actually a nice feature, but again, it makes it a little bit difficult to tell whether you have them fully backed out. So here I back some problematic fasteners out the rest of the way, and then finagle, 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 and eventually you'll be able to get the timing cover out. And here you can get a little glimpse of how those fasteners are held to the timing chain cover by the gasket. Now, if you took this whole thing apart, you know how to put it back together, so I won't sweat the details on reassembly. It's pretty much the same steps as disassembly, but a few notes here. Take your time lining these fasteners up, because if you cross-thread one of these, I don't even want to imagine the world of pain you will be in. So just take your time, line them up, make sure that they thread in properly. Now, if you removed your dipstick funnel, and I hope you did because it gives you a bunch more space, when you reinstall it, if you're having problems finding the hole that it goes in, again, it's just sort of held in place by an O-ring, you can reach your hand up behind the passenger side front wheel and feel the dipstick and guide it into the hole. If you nibbled away zip ties from the wiring harness like I did, then remember to get new zip ties and strap them back down to the same spots. Here's examples of my completed work. Here's a picture of every tool I used on this job, but in reality I could have done the entire job with the 4 tools on the left. This kind of mini low-profile screwdriver ratchet, basically a ratchet that can accept a screwdriver style T27 Torx bit, a 10mm box wrench, my homemade T27 Torx bit with masking tape jammed into a 1/4-inch socket, and then finally your run-of-the-mill pliers for removing hose clamps. The mini ratchet was really the star of this show, so I'll see if I can find a link to that and maybe include it in the description of this video, so check there. The timing chain cover on a Mk7 VW is made of plastic and is subsequently prone to warp over the years and begin leaking oil. That timing chain cover has 2 or 3 gaskets, one around the entire perimeter, and either 1 or 2 depending on if you have 1 or 2 camshaft adjuster magnets. In my case, I had a slow leak by the camshaft adjuster magnet, and again, I don't think that's because the gasket went bad, but rather because the entire timing chain cover expands and contracts with heat and over time warps. Regardless, even if you had a bad gasket, I would say go ahead and replace the entire cover with the gaskets because it's sort of a pain to get this thing out. So you may as well replace the whole thing while you're in there. This procedure is roughly the same for almost all Mk7 VWs, but this particular example is a 2016 VW Golf Sportwagen with the EA888 1.8 TSI engine with 1 camshaft adjuster magnet.